Well, good morning, everybody. First, before I start talking about the duration of the cold, the potential coastal storm system off the Carolinas later on this weekend, and then, elsewhere around the world, the patterns that are shaping up to give us what we might think the February and March pattern may look like, I just want to assess where we've been, all right? This is very typical La Nina look at winter. The map is starting on the 1st of January and goes through just a couple of days ago. And this has been the biggest piece, this highly variable Pacific high pressure cell. All right. And what it has done is at times allowed the jet to come up and around and dive through the country, giving us lots of clippers. Now, we have had other types of storm systems, but more often than not, it's been clippers rolling around this low. A lot of ridging into Greenland, a lot of Arctic ridging, and lately we've seen this help with the disruption of the polar stratospheric vortex as well, pushing heat on both sides of North America into the Arctic, which is what's displaced even more cold air into this region. We've seen the Bermuda high, at least at the mid-levels looking at it, pushed way out to open ocean here. And at times the jet has just ripped across the Atlantic Ocean and set up a really active pattern across Europe. We've seen a lot of cold air here as well. Now I'm doing this because I want to know, when we start to ask, can the pattern break? We always ask, does persistence, the phrase "win the day"? Does it always come back and cause more problems? And the way I look at it is kind of at the same view here, but using the European artificial intelligence. Is there much change in this? I mean, there seems to still be ridging here, big ridging there, troughs to the south ripping across most of the the Atlantic here, starting in the East Coast. I mean, this is a little different. We continue to see lows trying to curl their way up into the Gulf of Alaska, but in the near term, we're having a difficult time breaking down this western ridge. And the consequence of that is that over the next couple of weeks, well, if your low is here, all of your best flow goes into this part of the coast of North America, which is British Columbia to southern coast of Alaska. We do not introduce good jet stream flow into the west, which we have to talk more about. We do get clippers that come through. Yes, there's a storm system here happening this weekend we need to talk about, but behind it, it's just a lot of very, very cold and dry air. And the extent of this cold air needs to be discussed intently about what could be coming down into parts of Florida and along the entirety of the Gulf Coast. And I just switched to models, right? I was showing you the AI model. This is the GFS. I could show you the Europe. It doesn't matter. They all look the same right now in this forecast. So what I'm concerned about is our last 14 days of precipitation. Okay, look at the west. I mean, there's a lot of zeros out there. That's not missing data. That's just no moisture at all. We've seen a lot of upper Midwest dryness as well. Now, meanwhile, of course, we did have this big system that rolled through here, but a lot of that came through was snow. You can see we're dry in southern Texas where they are planting corn despite the risk of major cold air coming down here. And then we can also see what's going on in Florida with being relatively dry. Just add some days onto this, the last 30 days. And I continue to see Four Corners issues. We talked earlier in the week about how the North Platte River and the South Platte River snowpack is woefully short, some of the lowest we've seen. The upper Colorado Basin is currently at the lowest it's been in the last 10 years. We're just starting to get concerned about what that is going to mean for those major river systems and their snowpack. Now, I know California's drought-free. I know California's got 125% of its historical reservoir levels right now, and there's about almost 28 million acre feet of water. But the reality is we still have to get more in winter in order to push this through. In the last 60 days, now we come back to more of, there's a little bit of December in this, right? Or a lot of December in this, forgive me, which was very wet here and snowy here, although this map misses some of the golden triangle dryness that we saw. But now this whole region begins to show up a whole lot more clearer as one of our driest sectors. And since the start of winter on December the 1st, I've still got huge portions of the southern plains getting over toward the Delta, the Mid-South, the Ohio Valley, that is, especially here in Missouri, Arkansas, that are still incredibly dry. And now that is not to ignore Florida or what's going on here in the Carolinas or in parts of the Mid-Atlantic. Yes, we did just get a big storm system to come through here. This area missing out entirely on snow. In fact, the temperatures here just keep warming up so dramatically coming off the mountains too, making it even drier in places. But look at what's happened since I picked January 4th for a reason, because it was December 21st through January 3rd that we actually had big coastal lows hitting California. Well, you take those away and just say, well, what's happened since January 4th? And now we can start to see the extent of the dryness in the Northwest, the extent of the dryness in California, Montana, the Dakotas. And even though you say, wow, look at that though, we've made major recoveries here, we have to be careful with this because those major recoveries are happening when you compare the precipitation, okay, that's all this is doing, to what historically happens from January 4th to January 27th, going back to 1893. So we go, wow, it's been so wet, but you have to remember this is not the wet time of year. So to be wetter than average in Kansas, like you just saw here, okay, look at that. It doesn't take much, right? Now compare this. This is the January 30-year normal to the May 30-year normal. And you have parts of Kansas that in May can expect to get 3 to 5 inches of rain, or in January, the total liquid equivalent is under an inch. And in western Kansas and Colorado, it's typically nothing. So we have to understand that these statistics are always compared to the same range of dates that are shown on the map to history. And what's very important is this, given that the West, this is the wet season for the West. All right, the rest of the country, no. We tend to hit spring, summer. If you're in the Southeast, sometimes your wettest season is in fall when we have the hurricanes coming through. So this is why I'm stressing these issues here. Okay, so soil moisture sometimes tells us the story as well. So despite that large winter storm coming through, don't forget the only sector that kind of opened up to above freezing temperatures was here. And that's where we didn't freeze the soils completely, got some of that rain to get into the ground. Now, yes, we followed this up with ice that came on the backside, but these soil moisture deficits in this corridor, in this part of the mid-Atlantic, Piedmont getting into parts of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and up into Maryland too, the dryness in Florida, and then take a look, part of the Columbia Basin pushing up to the Blue Mountains here. Look at the Willamette Valley. Matt mentioned that yesterday. We got an issue here. You're like, well, wait a minute. I know there's snow on top of that. Sure, you can see. Can you see it under the clouds yesterday before the sunset? Broad area of snow. Well, except in through here, this region continues to be snow-free right now. So when you look at it, the snow water equivalent of like, all right, if we could only get this to melt and get into this, soil, or if we could only get better flow to come back into the West to start just bringing up those snowfall totals here as we approach. We're almost in the last third of winter. It's moving fast. We've got February, March, to be honest with you. And so we need to be just cognizant of these issues, especially this, because of the duration of the cold and the fact that when this snow hit, our soil temperatures were so low. You can see that right now this morning, the 6 a.m. 4-inch soil temperatures here, they're way below freezing, which means when this snow tries to melt, it's probably going to melt, get in the rivers, or melt sublimate. It's going to run off. We're not going to be using this to correct soil moisture issues at this level because of these temperatures. So that is what's top of mind for me right now. It's always, I'm just looking at the long game. Like, what did that system do? I know it was very high impact in the near term. We still have hundreds of thousands of people without power in this corridor here. That's just to name one spot. But the reality is that the bigger picture for ag as we work our way toward spring, this is a situation that needs still correcting. And if I was just looking at this one, let's kind of zoom in here, too far. I was just watching, like, where is this air coming from right now? And if you have a good look at this, kind of just start it here, comes up through the Arctic, down through the Canadian archipelago, and then it just dives, all the way into the southeast. And I'm in Savannah this morning, speaking at an event down here. And I will say this, yes, it's cold, but when I got off the airplane last night, it was 35 degrees, and it felt so warm because where I have been in the Midwest, temperatures every night getting down below zero, I just stood outside and kind of breathed in the mild air, but it's still going to get very, very cold into the south, as this is going to be an unrelenting, pattern of just delivering cold air. So this is how things look early this morning, about 4:20 this morning. And we are continuing to deal with these Arctic pushes. And I want to talk more about temperatures now that I want to come back to that precipitation narrative. Because this morning, this is going to be top of mind for me in the near term. It's going to be the temperatures here as we approach the next 4 to 5 days. And then the low that forms this weekend off the coast of the Carolinas. I got to watch how this is going to play out. So let's talk about these temperatures, because my frost risk map, which I haven't shown you in a while because it's winter, we expect this. But the concern right now is that if you look here, look how far to the south that frost risk map makes it. They're going, holy cow, all the way to the Keys. Now listen, when I make the map, I call it a frost risk map. And what I do is I set the threshold at 35 degrees Fahrenheit. So what I need you to know is if the National Digital Forecast Database predicts a temperature, a minimum temperature in the day, of 35 degrees or colder, so it includes the 35 degree value, and then I run the risk of seeing patchy frost when you get down close to it. And that's what we're looking at here, okay? Now, the National Digital Forecast Database is showing these for minimum temperatures. Now, we can see the actual number being forecast. That's what's overlaid in black. The shading represents anomaly, okay? Some of my other maps, I put the value of the anomaly, not this one. This is the actual low, and then the anomaly is color shaded. So, for example, back home, where my family is, -7 this morning, okay? But anomalously cold, much, much colder than average. Watch Florida as I go forward with this. This is this morning on Wednesday. There's Thursday morning, getting into Friday morning. Now watch Saturday. Very, very Arctic air coming through here towards Sunday. Now I see 21 in Jacksonville, 18 in Tallahassee, 32 in Tampa, 36 in Miami. I mean, we're getting some cold temp. That's Sunday morning, and this is Monday morning. So you see why we had that risk getting way down into southern Florida. So we just need to be aware that there is later this week, right as soon as this big storm system starts to build up here in the Carolinas, we're going to plunge cold air in behind us, while much of the West is mild compared to our normals for this time of year. Yes, 19 degrees is warmer than average in this part of this is Glasgow. Much warmer than normal in this part of the West. All right, I did want to zoom in here and just show you. This is Sunday, 6 a.m. temperatures according to the European model. And again, we're 26 in New Orleans, and we can just kind of hover through here and see a lot of 20s. I mean, this is Orlando getting very cold, and it's trying to reach all the way down here to the southern tip. So we just need to be aware that this is an historic event in terms of cold temperatures coming down south. And then if we go from Sunday into Monday morning, I'm just kind of clicking forward here. This is 6 a.m. Monday morning. So a lot of Arctic air is in place as we get into this region. Okay, helping all of this out, just watch this animation. This is in the stratosphere. What you're keeping an eye on here is our very much displaced stratospheric polar vortex. Just like in 2014, it is split on Big Scandinavian Ridge, Big Chukchi Sea Ridge, or Alaskan Ridge. Now again, this is in the stratosphere. And it just breaks this off into two lobes, which is why 2014 is one of my strongest analogs for predicting maybe the way that the transition from January to February is going to be. But that is what's aiding, such Arctic air getting here. It's the co-location of the polar stratospheric vortex with the tropospheric, that's the lower levels of the atmosphere, Arctic air, which is there. So let's look at these anomalies, okay? This is just every 6 hours looking at temperatures compared to normal. We're playing through Thursday into Friday. And here comes the plunge this weekend. There's Saturday getting into Saturday midday, Saturday evening, and there it is. The temperature's down here in some places 20 to 30 degrees colder than normal, just as we're watching this storm system erupt off the coast. Now, meanwhile, we start to see mild air attempt to revive itself on multiple rounds in the Canadian Prairie, in pockets throughout the Intermountain West, right up and down the Rockies. In the West, you hover too close to average for there to be, I think, a major story here. But if you're in the East, especially in the Northeast, we just continue to see this Arctic air in place. You're going, all right, what's happening here? Well, there's a bit of a fold in the ridge, and you start to see much more mild air rolling across part of the Canadian Prairie. But remember, even if you are 30 degrees above normal through the Canadian Prairie, you are still below freezing at this time. Keeping this going, some of that mild air tries to push into the upper Midwest. How long does it last? Well, look, we have another Arctic blast coming out to the east, according to the European operational run. So I just want to show you the way these temperatures fluctuate and make a point that even at the very end of the run, which gets us to February 11th, you see what's recharging here and where it's possibly going to go. And remember, it is Arctic air that dives into warm air to the south like this, which sets us up with storm systems here. And I'm questioning what might happen through this corridor specifically going into February. All right. So that's it. That's our broad temperature discussion. And just understand there's plenty of ensemble support with this. Here's the next 5 days. Let's slide this out to day 5 through 10. There's that warm up in the Canadian Prairie. The Arctic air just stays east. And here's day 10 through 15. Watch the Canadian the Canadian warm air fade. And as it fades toward the middle of the month, we're going to start to see more colder conditions returning here. But you do notice this. Watch it again. Watch the west. The ensembles looking at 5-day sliding windows do not take the west much, anywhere close to colder than normal for any sort of extended time period during that shot. I ask it about longer than that. I was just looking at this before we started. Take a look. This is a 1-week sliding window according to the European model. So that's week 2, which you just saw. Okay. What about week 3? It comes back again. And yes, this model has a cold bias in the west. All right. I think this is not correct, but this is. I think that is a real signal in the models. And that gets us out to the end of February and even the beginning of March. So yeah, that's all the way to March 14th on temperature anomalies. So this pattern has some staying power, which is why I proposed the question at the beginning. Is persistence our biggest issue here? All right, what about analogs? Well, there is a strong analog here, okay, with 14, 18, and 9. But when I bring in 18 and 9, you start to see more mild trying to return into the southeast at times. And while there's cold air coming through, I just wanted to put a line demarcating where when you blend my strongest analogs together, you know what you get. The other thing about this is, and we got to talk about precip next, is when you look at 14 and add 9 and 18, we did see better moisture in this area returning. Better moisture in this area returning. But I was just talking to a friend of mine that lives here last night, and he's like, man, this is the worst winter for us. It's so dry in parts of the Golden Triangle, Montana. And models keep saying moisture, and what ends up happening is the rain shadow effect has been dramatic. So we're questioning whether or not we can finally push better moisture into this part of the Northwest. And what about California in these models? Do we stay drier? Well, let's get in and talk about that. High-res models first. Let's just play this through what we're expecting through the next 60 hours. More lake effect snow coming out of eastern Montana to the parts of the northern plains, even clipping parts of Nebraska. Again, this is a major snow hole right now, so anything in there would be welcomed. There is a system coming into the northwest. Right there, it's 2 parts to it coming in on Thursday and Friday. But what we're going to watch again is the nose of high pressure interacting with an upper level low here that could set us up this weekend for a storm system along the coast. And I want to show you that by going to the European model and the new forecasting system. So it also has Thursday into Friday, the little clipper, bit of snow coming through on the edge of this high pressure. It has a system hitting the northwest, the lake effect here. We then play this forward, and here it is. This is our coastal low that came out on Friday, and then into Saturday, the new European model is bringing it just off the coast of Cape Hatteras. And compared to some previous runs, we're now starting to see increased chances in the European model of snow here. Now, that system in previous forecasts hugged the coast and brought much, much greater snow onshore. Right now, the European model has tossed this out further to open ocean. Now, again, we're still, we're 90 to 115, 114 hours away from this time period, which again is this upcoming weekend. Any shift to the west in this will increase more of the probability of heavy snow through the I-95 corridor and major metropolitan areas. This is just the current look from the European model here, okay? So I play it forward. Notice on the backside with the next shot at colder air, snow coming through the Midwest. The west just continues to miss big systems. The fronts are slamming into British Columbia. Little clippers try to come through again by midweek next week. Maybe some rain getting down here into Dallas next week. That'd be nice. We need the moisture down there from Dallas toward Little Rock. But this isn't one of those big weather systems. There's no closed low with this. It's just clippers to the north. And that's a 10-day outlook from the European model. Now, to do a little bit deeper digging on this system, I went out here and just stopped this at 6 p.m. Saturday. And I was just like, all right, where is that low when I look at the GFS versus the European? Because they were wildly different earlier in the week. And now we're starting to see that on Saturday there's a bit more agreement in this. And as the storm system rolls east and north, I'd say the GFS has got the better snowfall chances for pockets of the coastal portions of the Northeast. So that is what's going to be a major focus factor as we get into this weekend. Okay, let's go ahead and have a look at some snow maps. European model, I was just talking with a colleague of mine, Ben Hawkinson, down here. He's in North Carolina. And yesterday's models from the European were not dropping this much snow. Ben, if you're looking at this morning, 4 inches is where I start my blues here. So we do have some heavier snows coming in this week. And again, you just saw the timing of it right here. So this would be midnight on Saturday, Saturday morning, Saturday midday, Saturday afternoon, and evening. So that's what we're watching for the storm system going right up through the Carolinas into Virginia. But again, the European model solution, this is the AI solution, very similar, honestly, although the totals are greater the farther you get into the coastal plain here. This is the GFS, which is an absolute powerhouse of a storm system, aggressively forecasting huge snows in North Carolina and Virginia out of this. And then finally, we've got the blend. So Ben, just something to think about here. I mean, if we look at all of our models, they've all gone after more aggressive snowfall for this weekend. Again, we're 90 to 115 hours out, but I want you to see that. Probabilistically, probability-wise, whatever the right word is there. Looking at the probabilities, even the chance at getting 3 inches is now, 50 to 80% across the Carolinas, and then just look right into that corridor as to what we're looking at there. By the way, chance of 1 inch looks something like this. So there is snow, there is snow chances here this weekend. Same for the right end through here. But heaviest snows, there's the probability of 6 inches, so we're at a 30 to 50% chance here along the coast. And over a foot, this storm system right now in the models is too far offshore to kind of consider. Okay, maybe Cape Cod. We need to look out for that. Boston, Cape Cod, which Boston just got slammed by the last system. The reality of it is, by day 10, we're still here where we started this whole discussion. And that is why the farther out we look, I can show you any of the models you want to look at. They all kind of have the same story here. There's a whole lot of dryness coast to coast in the midsection of the United States. I mean, the mid-latitudes are dry in this pattern. All right. Now, as they're going to break down, we have been hammering this for a while. Like, oh, look, MJO phase 6 into phase 7 and 8. We know these are the colder phases. We keep seeing the models hint. That's what these dots are. There's days out in the future. The hinting of getting into phase 2, 3, 4. And I've shown it to you like 15 times. You know what I'm going to say? Hey, get over here and into this area. And we start to see troughing that comes through and wipes out this risk of being drier from coast to coast. We like it. But are we ever going to get it? I'd say, well, our analogs say better chances in through here. But some of the models say, well, you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to wait till mid-February before that shows up. So to show you that, this is the European model forecast. But we're going to do this kind of sliding 1 week window going through February. This is through February 3rd. This is getting out there at the end of week 2, February 11th. So I didn't see it yet. But after we get past February 11th and get out there farther, so this is now out to the 19th, the week ending on the 23rd, 24th, I see the model increasing those regions, right? And that's what a transition into phase 2, 3, 4 could do. And this is suggesting that we get better moisture west, better moisture Midwest, and maybe that at least lines up with what the analogs say going through February. See it? But I'm just going to come back to the first slide I showed you. Sorry, that's the second slide. Here's the first one. We have to see the atmosphere completely dissolve persistence and relocate this trough here, push this ridge to the Aleutian Islands, and bring back that ridge to this area. That's what needs to occur for this to happen, and that's why we're watching the MJO. It could be the spark that gets us there at much later in the month of February. But that's it. The same features are being watched halfway around, to our south. And what we're keeping an eye on here is that lately there's been some drought building from, this is Buenos Aires, over toward Cordoba, Santa Fe, Entre Rios. This has been a key area for growing crops. We've seen some estimates start to drop down here, just barely in terms of total production. But when you start to see the forecast over the next 14 days, avoiding that area with good moisture, while it's very, very wet farther to the north, this is something we're going to have to keep an eye on. Are we too wet in this area from like Goiás into Mato Grosso and to Sao Paulo to progress fast with harvest? We know they're at 14% harvested in Mato Grosso, and I think they're going to continue to stay on that pace here. But just something I think I'm going to have to watch in South America. And I'm waiting to see if compounding news here is going to start to add up. And we're going to start to see this as being a problem for productivity coming out of Argentina and down into Uruguay. I will take note that you see Rio Grande do Sul is dry, but right now their NDVI is way above average, suggesting the crop health is pretty good. So this is what we're watching midweek. We'll keep this going tomorrow and Friday, see how this pattern evolves, gives us a better idea about this upcoming weekend. But with that, I'll wrap it up here and just tell you all have a great day. Be safe. We'll talk again soon. Thanks.